Hello and welcome to SlummerTV, episode 16. This is the official Neon Divide podcast. I'm your host, Skiz, and tonight we are talking more about some of the dev work going on behind the scenes. I'm joined today by some of our more systems-focused devs. Starting off, we've got Deadly off the end there.
Hi, I'm Deadly. One of the oldest devs on the project, actually one of the two oldest staff members in general. I do Udon code. Some of you might also know me as one of the people who used to run this podcast.
Yep.
Yeah, nowadays I mainly work from the depths of the dev basement, just making everything around us work.
And then we've got Sizzle.
Hello. Are we doing?
Yeah.
I've been with been watching Neon Divides in season 2. Got in on season 3. Most of the way through, got on to staff, character team, and then dev.
Very good, very good.
I'm a web person and a backend person.
I mean, that's
And a map
always
person.
needed. Excuse me. Always needed. And then, of course, we've got Oblivious.
Hi, I'm one of the original cast from season 1, turned dev and now administrator. My job is mostly management these days. However, I am also a specialist when it comes to shaders, lighting, and optimization. So a lot of my work hasn't yet happened, but I'll be there to make certain that everything runs smoothly once everything's put together.
Very good, very good. I mean, we've got a lot to show off, a lot to look at, like a bunch of little videos, some screenshots. Before we dive in on that, though, I guess let's just kind of talk very briefly about I mean, we kind of dipped in a little bit on the on what each of you kind of do with the dev side of things, but I guess more specifically, do any of you work on any other projects at all? Like, or is this kind of the biggest one that you're working on, or the only one, or starting with Deadly, I suppose?
For me, it is literally the only project because the stuff that I do is unfortunately so time consuming that there is not much time to really work on other projects besides Neon Divide. But yeah, it's occasionally there's collaborations with other RP communities that I participate in, but mainly just indie.
I am all over the place. Neon Divide. Also did a roleplay recently called Worlds Apart roleplay. That started and finished over I think it was about an 8-month period. I was admin, GM, and map dev for that. And then in the general metaverse, the long-running open roleplay community roleplay. I am a member of many groups there, making maps and avatars and all the things.
Yeah, I feel like I had a friend who was just happened to randomly like get into VRRP outside of any of the same ways that I did, and at some point they were like, "Oh yeah, I've seen here's like a map that I've RP'd in before," and I'm like, "Oh hey, Sizzle made this," and it was just like rather funny to me, like that there's all this crossover between the different VRRP groups.
Yeah, it's amazing making maps for specific things, and then of course they become public, and we share them around for any group to use. And just randomly seeing on Twitch a bunch of people running around a map I've made, and doing their own story. It's amazing.
That's how it happens.
Why I'm here.
And then Oblivious, I mean, you've been involved in VRRP for quite a long time.
Yes, since the early days in 2018, I've been doing roleplay, and it was my first introduction to roleplay. VRChat has been my home for the past, goodness, over 5 years now. So, but since then, I've gotten involved in multiple communities. I do a lot of community management type stuff, whether it be coordinating between different groups. I run my own group called Aegis. I've helped different role plays build up over the years, including things like Purple Lotus, many smaller groups within the wider public metaverse style role play. as well as providing dev support for both things like avatars and worlds for several different projects, such as things like Warp and now Neon Divide. I tend to float around everywhere, and I try to help out wherever I can.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the fun thing is that like for how like for how varied the space is, there's a lot of space to get involved in like helping out with some of these projects and running them, and obviously helping on the dev side. There's always a need for people to help out with that kind of stuff. So there's always a good space for if you're interested in helping out, you can kind of help out pretty easily.
And even on the smaller side, there's always a need for mentors, someone to help troubleshoot or teach someone how to make their own role play, whether it be making avatars, NPCs, or just putting together map stuff.
Yeah. So, as previously mentioned, we do have a lot to show off. So I figure let's dive straight in. I think, first of all, I mean, one of the things that Neon Divide is pretty well known for is we've got quite a lot of working systems. So, like for instance, we've got the gun system, and we have some new guns to show off. These have all been modeled by Mezode, correct?
Yes, these particularly on stream are essentially to give you a little bit more context. One of our goals for season 4 is to make the gunplay a lot less focused around the individual gun stats, because so far we always had the problem that over the long term all players opted for corp guns, because those were just numerically the best weapons you could have by quite a margin. And instead we now want to utilize guns more as a tool of RP to express your character, and not just as a thing where there is one objectively correct choice of gun. So to do that, we are doing two things. On one hand, we are basically completely rebalancing all the weapons for season 4 to be a lot tighter together. And instead of being a good gun and a bad gun, we balance the weapons around having different focus groups now. So some guns are better at one thing, other guns are better at another thing. But generally speaking, going out there, taking the super crazy scrap gun from the wastelands now is finally a valid choice for our peers, because it's not going to just be numerically a lot worse. And to do that, we've been doing a bunch of things. The first thing we can see here is we have been redesigning some of our existing weapons. Here you can see some work in progress 3D models of the new Valkyrie weapons. That's what we have on this image. Darks, if you skip to the next one.
Oh yeah, and this is another part
There
of it.
is another variation that leads into the first thing. We are currently experimenting with the possibility to create weapons variations, and there's another bit to it that will be a little bit later, but if we...
So in
Next
doing so,
image.
you'd be like kind of customizing instead of just
Yes.
everyone having the exact same Valkyrie rifle. You
Yes.
might be able to change the scope, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
If we skip like one more, we'll get to the next big point. We are introducing a new tier of guns, specifically Merc tier weapons. It's going to be a tier of weapons that is on par with the corporate weapons, but not directly corporate branded, to give the non-corporate affiliated players a still high-tech weapon that is not a cobbled together AK-47, but nothing that is a thing that you would definitely need to get from a corp. Instead, it's a thing that every gunsmith out there can technically create if they decide to put the resources and skills into it. So that's the other big new thing regarding to weapons. And then if we go one further, dogs, that's more Merc tier weapons.
And once
One
again, we're
more.
seeing some of those like customizable like
Yes.
parts on some of them.
Yes, and one more, please. I should have put these in another order. Here we come to the actually cool part. We are currently working on a system to customize your gun's paint job. So you can basically even more individualize your gun with one of a few predefined paint job sets, primarily interesting for corporate players that want to show their corporate affiliation through their firearm as well, but we are also currently looking into different paint jobs for the non-corporate guns to express yourself as a player even more. Yeah, that's my rambling
Very cool.
on part 1 of the gun system. Is there anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, I mean, so I think one of the nicer things about this is, I mean, because in the past, as you previously mentioned, we kind of had this issue where we were running into, okay, everyone kind of, leans towards, okay, eventually I have to get a Valkyrie weapon, I got to get a Shimetsu weapon, I have to get one of these very high-end things, and so it kind of led to sort of a thing where, okay, well, everyone's just going for the exact same guns because they are objectively the best. Now we're going to be able to say, okay, now it can be more of an RP choice. Now it makes a little bit more sense where, someone in Scrap Town can use a scrap weapon and it makes sense, and it's not just like, oh, well, they just clearly haven't, spent the time and money to, work up towards a bigger gun yet. Now you'll actually, it'll make sense for some people to be carrying that stuff around, which I think is a good way to work with it from, it being primarily focused on RP instead of just let's get, the best numbers possible, which I think is in general a good focus for role play design, since that's what this is, a role play. Yeah. And then I know we also have some more stuff for the scopes.
Yes,
Correct?
that's the next big thing. We also went in and looked at enhancing the user experience utilizing these guns. And one big thing, and you can see the video about that here on screen now, is the implementation of new scopes. The old scope system was basically lining up a crosshair with a little dot in the front. Now we actually have functioning shaders for all of that. So here you were just able to see the demonstration of a reflex sight, which is physically accurate, etc. Blah blah. I'll spare you all the details about vector parallaxing and stuff. It works. It looks like how a real scope in real life would look, and it's as functional, which makes it great to handle.
Yeah, I mean, so I personally haven't played a combat-focused character yet. I mean, I've not even gone on any runs myself in character. But I know that, I mean, the two of you obviously have gone on runs in the past. Have you kind of found, I know that that's something that I heard a lot of in the past was like, okay, actually getting the scopes to work, actually, aiming was kind of a little bit more tricky. Is that kind of, does this kind of do you think that this will help sort of along those lines, actually being able to portray a character that's actually good at these things when you have the tools?
Portraying, definitely, I'd say. My whole thing when I was playing, doing shadow runs and that kind of stuff, is actually generally stuck to single-handed like pistols and revolvers.
Mm-hmm.
Purely because I wanted the role play and because I preferred that style of high
Yeah.
accuracy, high damage weapon that shoots really slowly. I like that. It works well for me and it feels good to me. But having working scopes, because I did, I think 3.5, I had a scene where I was sitting up high and providing overwatch for a get together that was happening in the row, and I was trying to use the scope, and it was really difficult because it doesn't zoom properly, which I think you've been working on something for that specifically.
Yes. Yep.
But having something that's actually functional, especially given the fidelity that is lost in a a VR headset, it's really nice to have something that isn't just kind of cobbled together, but actually works functionally as you would expect a scope to do.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's one thing to, kind of say, okay, well, this looks pretty good, but like actually Deadly taking the time here to like, okay, let's make sure it's actually one-to-one exactly what you expect from a real world scope. I mean, especially because we do have some people with a background where they've used that in real life, actually being able to pull on their own experiences for their characters that are supposed to have that same experiences is a good thing. You're not just going in and like, okay, well, this is hard to aim because it's VR. Actually being able to use that existing knowledge for for a character who's supposed to have that knowledge is super useful to have.
Yeah.
It also swings the other way because my character, it's my objective to basically get her as inaccurate as possible with weapons, so that if she's handed a gun and told to fire it, she's a danger. So from my perspective, it'll be very obvious to have that bead, and then the shot just fire off in another direction, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely
yeah.
emphasize on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is that it goes both ways. Now you can. I mean, to some extent, like we have the accuracy system that kind of like deviates, where you're firing, but also being able to like make those clear, like oh, this person can't hit the broadside of a barn, kind of shots. Actually being able to know exactly where it's supposed to go, and then you can fudge it so that it's okay. Now it's even more wild. Definitely helps a lot. And so, Deadly, and something that Oblivious just brought up as well is the new scopes. I think that's
Yes,
in the
sniper
next.
scopes. That is the next video, because I overhauled those as well. Yeah, it's a little easier to see against the backdrop of the sky. But once again, we have a newly created shader for this scope that basically behaves like a sniper scope would. And I actually worked pretty closely together with a few friends of mine who have an active military background to get these things right. So yeah, that's the second part of the scope overhaul. The sniper is, which from the time that I've played around with them are now a lot easier to use thanks to the new scopes, because A, we have extra magnification, and B, the scope is not just lining up a crosshair with a dot again, which it used to be.
Because I know that was actually specifically an issue. I think it was season 3, or was it 3.5? Regardless, there was a sniper plot line in the Wasteland at one point, and they had to like really finagle with things to like figure out, okay, this is where we actually have to shoot to actually get where we want to shoot. There is a lot of playing around that the GMs had to do. Like I remember specifically some meetings where Willixer would be like, okay, when you're using the sniper scope, this is where like you have to aim slightly, in this direction for it to hit there, because they were doing a thing where they had to have an accurate sniper, GM NPC in the Wasteland. That, I mean, now that'll be a lot easier to do that kind of thing. So that's very nice to, the more stuff that we can get where it's just, okay, you don't have to think too much out of character. You just pick it up and it works as you would expect in character. I think that's really the one of the biggest goals with a lot of this back-end dev stuff, is to get as much possible so that it looks, so that it's just diegetic. It's, you expect how it works in character, and that's how it works. I think that's one of the smoothest ways to approach this stuff.
And it's good that you bring that up, because that's actually the philosophy that we are currently putting into reworking a lot of the systems. The general creed we're going by on the side of systems dev is the idea of the less a player needs to think about how to interact with systems, and the more naturally these systems feel for the players, the less they will pull them out of the RP experience, and the less they'll break their immersion. So we have quite a few systems, and there's a few more coming up later, that focus specifically around keeping things easy and keeping things natural, so the player automatically knows how to interact with them, and can immerse themselves more in the roleplay and less have to think about interacting with the systems.
Very cool, very cool. And I think that's a thing that's kind of permeated the VR RP space in general. Like a lot of people are realizing, hey, we have the ability to put a lot of systems in now, but, let's try and make sure that it's not taking away from the role play experience. Let's make sure that it's, fully in character. It feels right. It, isn't something that's just like, oh, okay, now let me come out, do these things, and then go back into character. Now more of a focus on, okay, let's,
Immersion.
yeah, immersion and just diegesis and, making sure that it's not, okay, it's time to remember that this is a video game. you know, I think that's a nice thing. As I mean, the VR RP space is still fairly young, and people are still figuring out a lot of things. And I think that's one of the nice things that's kind of come about recent. I mean, it's been a while, or it's been around for a while, but I think there's a lot of people making some good headway on the idea of, okay, let's not, yes, there's a lot that we can do, but let's not interrupt too much. Let's remember that VRRP is very good at immersion. Let's not break that immersion too much. What do we have next here? I think it's
The next thing on our list, that is actually talking about the immersion.
yeah, exactly.
One of the systems that I completely overhauled is elevators. And in the background here, you can see a slightly longer demonstration. The two big changes for the elevators, one of them already has been implemented on the row, is seamless transmissions. So instead of just having an elevator cabin where everybody just walks in, pushes a button, and then teleports up separately, we have a cabin that does not only teleport everybody who's inside there up at the same time, but also does so remembering their orientation relative to the cabin. So for the people inside, it literally just feels like the door closes, they can run around in there as much as they want, and then the door opens again and they are there. The second thing, and that's the new thing that I'm currently working on, is that instead of just having two open cabins at two ends of an elevator shaft, we now have doors at the bottom, maybe on the second floor and maybe on the third floor. And the elevator is actually getting simulated to the degree where it is in one of these locations, but if the elevator is upstairs, you're downstairs, then downstairs, the door will be closed. You'll have to push the button, call the elevator, and then the elevator is going to make its way downstairs. And if somebody happens to stand inside of the elevator upstairs while you do that, they're going to be called down. And that leads to the next big new thing. We now can do elevators with multiple stories. So that's a thing you're going to see quite a bit in Union Heights. And we are also going to look into bringing these elevators to the other maps. I'm just not exactly sure where we can implement multiple stories yet without unlocking completely new RP spaces. But yeah, that's effectively elevators version 2.1 in a nutshell.
And it's funny how, this is the sort of thing that, you think about elevators in real life and you're like, well, of course, that's how elevators work. But it is still, somewhat of a development to have, that sort of a system in VRChat versus what we've had in the past, where it's just kind of, if you think back to previous seasons when you get into elevators, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, it's just a teleport button, to upstairs, to downstairs, and then you have a chance while you're just standing in an elevator that someone just teleports right in front of you, and they're like, what? Okay, I guess let's pretend like we shared the elevator ride together. You have that kind of moment. Whereas now you can just actually get in the elevator, and if you hit the button before someone else comes in, they have that RP of like, oh, this person didn't want to ride the elevator with me, or this person cut me off. There's a lot more. It's a small little character interaction, but it's a new character interaction that you get to play with, which in something like Union Heights, where you're going to have a lot of elevators.
Yep, we're going to have a lot of elevators. And the other thing that the scene that I imagined when building these things was basically that awkward moment when you go into an elevator and somebody else basically rushes in right before the door closes, and you both need to go to the same floor, but you have like 25-30 seconds of an elevator ride. And we can't do that with these systems. And then you're sitting there in this elevator, or you're standing there in this elevator together, and just having this awkward moment of silence where you don't know if you should start a conversation or just leave it be. And I'm really looking forward. This might sound weird, but I'm really looking forward to my season 4 elevator conversations.
Yeah, I mean, there's always something to like awkward RP. Snow just said in chat, awkward RP, best RP. It's a kind of RP that like,
Mm.
you don't get to have otherwise.
Yeah.
Not only that, but this is something Sizzle and I experienced working together on certain stuff for Warp. Creating spaces that feel seamless
Mhm.
is really, really important for immersion.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There are a ton of different role plays, and personally having been in participated in a number of role plays where they have different areas that are separated, not necessarily just by a door, but by an entire teleport. So rather than walking
Yeah.
through the doors and having that natural exchange between people, you bump into each other at the door, or, have these spaces where conversation can begin. You just teleport, and it's
Yeah.
not very. It doesn't feel. It feels jarring, I suppose. Is the big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I fully agreed there. That moment of like, okay, let me go in here. Hey, like, and you kind of, there's often this kind of thing when you're going in somewhere and you want someone to follow you, where you all just kind of stand there for a moment, like all holding the door to make sure that you're all
Mhm.
seeing that you're all going in the door together.
Mhm.
There's that awkward moment that these kinds of things can help alleviate, those moments of, okay, we're in character, we're talking, okay, let's all stand at the door, look at each other, make sure that we're all going in.
Mhm. Mhm.
Anything to alleviate those moments is huge.
And there's also
Um,
having the real spaces without teleports between locations, with functional doors, being able to make it more obvious if you're eavesdropping
Yep.
or, passing by and overhearing a conversation through an open doorway kind of
Mhm.
thing.
It opens up a lot for just really clean, just
Mhm.
naturally flowing role play.
Yeah, fully agreed.
You know,
Anything that you can kind of, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just sitting here giggling because I know what's coming next.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we've got the car thing before that, but
oh yeah.
yes, yeah. I was thinking the same thing here. In fact, let's get through the car
Yeah,
thing next,
the
so that we
car
can move
thing.
along. Yeah.
Go for it.
One other funny system that is just a small thing that has the potential to make a big impact is I looked at the way how players enter and leave the maps, and the thing that I looked at first is the car landing pad. We have them currently on 2 maps, both Thoreau and Union Heights, and at the moment, the way how it basically works is you just have a landing pad with a car on it, and then you walk up to the car and you all communicate, we're getting into the car now, and then you all respawn. And on the other way around, if you want to enter the map, you just have a teleport button in the spawn room, and then you teleport to a single place at the car landing pad, and then there's suddenly 5 people plopping into the exactly same location, and it's all a little bit immersion breaking. So what I started working on is a system that allows us to, on one hand, walk up to a car in the map, click on the car, and at that moment, everybody who is on the pad will get pulled into the car. The car starts a nice little animation where it flies off. Everybody gets teleported to the spawn room in the meantime, so they are not actually there anymore. New car comes in, takes the car's place, and on the other side, and that's what we're seeing here now. You walk up to the car, click the button, car flies off. You're already in the spawn room by that point, and then car in that case does a little spinny because I messed up the animation. New car flies in, takes its place, and the next group can fly off the map. And on the other side, you can have a button in the spawn room that has a dedicated area, and every player in that area will basically get flagged. Car flies in, lands on the pad, teleports all the players onto the pad. Car flies off. Players can enter into the map and enjoy their RP. And for the people who might stand right next to the landing pad, it actually looks a lot more organic than just people plopping in and out.
Because suddenly they're like, oh, there's a car coming. Oh, that must mean that someone's coming, instead of like, oh, a bunch of people appeared here with no warning.
Yeah.
That's a thing that I would love to happen eventually with the boat in the Undercity too. We'll have to talk
That's
about.
one of the other
Yeah,
candidates for exactly this.
yeah.
The goal
'Cause-
is to eventually make every well-used map entrance and exit hooked up to a system in that way that we have a queue of people coming in and a queue of people leaving, and that includes the car pads, that includes the boats, That includes stuff like the train in the row. It
The elevators.
includes stuff like the elevators to the wastelands in the Undercity. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think people kind of can sometimes underestimate the importance of entering and exiting a map. We actually experimented with something like this over in Aether Chronicles, where entering and exiting the map is done by these, big teleporting pads, that sort of thing. And originally, you would just click a button and you would just, boom, you're there. You're in the map. We worked on a system where not only would there be sounds and particles and other things to indicate, hey, there's some crazy magic stuff happening and a bunch of people are teleporting in, but we implemented stuff like seamless teleport, so that way it feels nice and clean, so that way you're moving cleanly across from one location to another. But then one of the things we found was having the audio as well, and the size of the particle effects, seeing this beam of light shoot up into the sky as someone teleports into the map, can really make for interesting moments when you're sitting there and you have this really ominous moment and suddenly you hear bush 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 as like 8 people all teleport in, and you're like, oh god, what's going on? That's unusual.
That's a good point.
Yeah, talk about immersive, because there was one situation where our characters are hunted, or were hunted, and we got word that someone was coming, and then just that rapid fire booming.
Yeah.
I was paranoid for the next couple episodes whenever I heard that sound.
Yeah.
In real life, like, I would get anxiety and tense up being in character. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean that's again, like, that's the goal, is it's instead of just like, it's creating another RP moment, instead of just like someone shows up. It's, you can actually be more like, you can anticipate their arrival as well, not just them showing up at your door, but like seeing, like, when you see that a bunch of cars are coming in, when whatever it is, that kind of thing can help kind of sell that like feeling of, oh, okay, there's things coming in and out, and like, am I worried about people coming in today? No, I'm pretty good, but like, maybe this means good business for me because I'm a store owner or whatever, whatever it means, it's another thing to role play with, and not just, oh, I wonder if there's a lot of people on the map today. Let me check to see, how alive the map is right now. Actually being able to hear a lot of people coming in, or when you hear a lot of people going out, and you're like, is there something going on today? I'm hearing a lot of people like going down to the wasteland. That elevator is constantly moving. Like, what's going on? Anything like that allows you to, gives you a lot more to role play with, which is, again, the point. So earlier we were talking about, walking in and out of, rooms, and not having to have that break where you're like, okay, let me teleport to this other room now. So this is probably one of the bigger things, one of
Yes,
the
it
bigger
is.
changes coming.
It definitely is.
I think there, yeah. So,
So, yeah, this is gonna get a little bit technical for a minute, so bear with me. Essentially, we introduced a completely new system that we call the Environment Manager. The Environment Manager allows our map creators to divide the whole map into layered zones. That means they can, for example, say, like shown in here, we have a top-down view of the clinic in the row. Most of you might have seen this space before. We can designate a lot of layers. We can designate our layer 0, which is an outside area. Then we have our layer 1, which would be the whole of the clinic building. Layer 2, which would be the back room. Layer 3, the storage room, and the elevators. And based on where in these layers the players are, I'm sorry, my pizza. Based on where they are, we can trigger certain things in the map, and a few of these things, but this is not limited to these, are stuff like post-processing effects, skybox transitions, background music, ambient sounds, and the most important thing and the most interesting thing for us from a map making perspective, we can now occlude audio from players based on the zone they are in. That means a common problem the people in the row, for example, had was that if somebody was sitting in this clinic in the storage room, which is the red zone at the top, and somebody was walking by the alleyway behind the clinic, they could overhear a conversation that was going on inside that clinic, which made absolutely no sense RP-wise. But it used to be that way, and now we can occlude the audio so nobody on the outside can hear what is going on inside the building, and vice versa. And this has one really, really, really big impact. It means that we can put RP places or RP spaces closer together without them actually interfering with each other audio-wise. And that means, for example, that on Union Heights, every interior will actually be on map. And we're trying to get that in the long term established on every map. That means instead of just walking up to a window and looking into an empty skybox, you're going to be able to look down on the road. You're going to be able to see the other players doing their daily business down there. And that on its own is already going to be a major improvement for the way how immersive things just feel. And little demo, thanks to the wonderful Snow, I was able to record that today of how the audio occlusion will work. Docs, roll the clip.
Sounds good. Hi, it's me, David, the villain. I'm evil. I'm gonna go and do evil things in this box.
And now he's inside another environment. So inside the building instead of outside. We cannot hear what he's
All
saying.
the robots and all of the poor people.
And he's back inside.
And now, of course, like
Llama.
the end goal is also to have like you'd have some kind of a transition zone as well, so it wouldn't
Yes.
just be a hard cutoff. Yeah.
The way how it will basically work is we can tie these things to doors.
Sounds
In
good.
this little test setup, it's not actually tied to doors,
Hi,
but
it's me,
in the final maps,
David,
we will
the
tie these
villain.
to doors. So as
I'm
long as
evil.
you're
I'm
inside
gonna
an
go
interior
and do
with an
evil
open
things in this
door,
box.
you're going to be able to hear what's going on inside and outside. But the moment the door closes, that will basically engage this audio
All the
cutoff
robots
and
all of the poor
therefore
people.
actually isolate the voices inside and outside of that door.
Now you can safely, when inside a
Llama.
room, know that no one's listening to you in the alleyway outside. Or, I mean, my favorite thing is here in the Undercity, in the scrap shop, and there's one corner that if you stand in and you talk, someone in the office of the coven can hear you talking. So, like, we would every now and then before sessions just kind of talk back and forth, like yelling through this wall because
Yeah.
you know they just happen to be like spatially near each other, and being able to like, okay, now we just can. That's not going to happen anymore. You know, if someone's in a room, there's not. You're not going to be hearing people next to you, in the room next to you, unless you know peek in, you know, and poke your head in the door or whatever. So I think that's going to be a huge thing because, I mean, that's one of the cool things about, you know, that you really get with proximity voice in general is being able to go, you know, take conversations aside. You know, not everyone can hear you at all times, which makes sense because that's how it works in real life. If you're in a little room off to the side, people can't hear you talking. You know? Being able to like have those more private spaces that aren't, you know, okay, here, let's have a quick conversation. Okay, let's teleport over. Okay, click. Okay, now we're in this new room. Okay, let's walk and find a new space in this new room that we didn't have a chance to see until we got here. You know, actually being able to, you know, to go in and, you know, peek in through the door beforehand, see if anyone's in that space before you're going in there. Anything like that is huge. And this is something that I know that Warp kind of has a similar
I was
thing,
gonna
right?
bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I've said it several times, but like creating diegetic systems that help reduce that jarring
Mhm.
kind of sensation that can come from being in VRChat, which isn't necessarily a platform built specifically for role play, but is for anybody who's creating things. And one of the
Yeah.
things that we found was because of the amazing audio system that Cylin had
Mhm.
developed, we were able to have this like really, really dense town
Mm.
where it's
Mhm.
not just, a little building. We have a building that has multiple stories, and you can be downstairs and have a conversation with someone and not
Yeah.
hear people talking directly above you.
Right.
And I know,
Be
especially for
muffled.
stuff like the
Yeah.
tavern,
Mhm.
that was a huge development because that meant people could be upstairs in the tavern and be standing out on like the balcony on the first floor
Yep.
and not hear the people who are upstairs at the bar.
Yeah. When we were going over the map design, because the map is as much of a character in the role play as the players are. Um the inspiration for it was those tight bars in Japan on the very narrow alleyways. We wanted that confined feeling in the town that would bring people together, for multiple reasons, just to give it that character, also to encourage role play, because we wanted people to have to, you know, come upon someone else while
Yeah.
they're traversing and forces interactions. Um, and with Cylin's solution, that opened the world for me to be able to have everything in place and close together. And with Union Heights, it's going to be really nice to be able to have that all physically represented where it is in the world, instead of
Yep.
having to go off to a skybox, as some people may refer to it. But having it right there, look through windows, look through doors, hear
Yeah. I
through
mean,
them. Yeah.
because it's one of those things where if you see more people, you end up RPing with more people.
Mhm. Yep.
It's if you're walking around and you don't see anyone because they've teleported into private spaces, you're not going to be you're not going to know that they're even there. So this will allow people to know, oh, okay, I see these people. Like I can see there's a meeting going on up there because like someone was just peeking out the window for a moment
Mhm.
there or whatever it is.
It's gonna be a lot
That
more fun sneaking around Union Heights than it was
yes,
the Upper City,
yeah,
because the Upper City had large, wide open spaces, and with just
Yeah.
the player population there, it was pretty easy to run around and never get caught.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
everyone was
Speak from
in those
experience.
separate areas. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, it's a really good point that you brought up Cylin system, because we looked at implementing that into the maps when we were talking about this audio occlusion originally, but and that is actually the reason why some of these things progress rather slowly. Usually, in most other projects, it's literally just going online, finding a package like Cylin system, drag and dropping it into the project, setting it up, and you're good to go. But with the amount of systems we already have in our maps and the way how they all interface with each other through Phase Dragon's Udon shell, we unfortunately are not able to just easily drag and drop stuff into our project. Instead, we need to effectively develop everything in house, which unfortunately leads to these prolonged development times. And that is why, unfortunately, we are a lot slower with systems development than a lot of other groups, because we need to do everything in house. But that also means that all our systems properly interface with each other, work together. One of the things that this, for example, interfaces with this whole audio system, but also the overrides, is that we can tie them into the admin console. We can give GMs, for example, the ability to hear through walls. So instead of no clipping outside of a space and just trying to listen in on a conversation and then not being able to because the system blocks them out, our system allows us to selectively enable and disable it for certain people, which also gives us an additional powerful GM tool. And yeah.
Yeah, because I can't tell you how often, as a GM, I will just no clip through a wall and listen to like a couple different scenes from just floating in that space between various, like actual playable spaces. So like actually being able to have that ability to toggle it on and off. is more useful than it sounds.
Mhm. But
But yeah,
yeah,
that's one of the things I'm most excited about is that in general, that the whole system that allows, because it's not just the voice occlusion, like you mentioned. There's also stuff like, so like right now we've got some kind of trigger zones in various parts of the map that like when you go into them, for instance, the hookah shop here in the Undercity, when you go into it, there's a little bit more smoky air in there. It's a little bit foggy. When you go into the ice district, it's kind of like there's kind of the sounds of some of the like it's just a different vibe in there. It's a little bit more cold post processing sort of stuff going on. This will actually not only give okay, now we can make sure that even when you teleport into a space, you'll still have it, because that's an issue that we have currently because it's a trigger zone. When you walk through it, that's when it changes. And then sometimes if you teleport out or if your character is too fast and somehow misses the trigger zone, you can be stuck with that cloudy haze over your vision from the hookah shop for a couple of minutes after walking into it.
yeah. At the moment, it's essentially just the gate within the doorways, but if you don't come in through the doorways, they don't trigger and everything gets messy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but also this system, this is also the one that allows for us to have more dynamic audio systems in the map, so that way we
Yes.
can have actually placed audio in different locations that I know
That is actually
Chandler and Snow has
another
been working
thing.
on.
That is another thing that's going to come up. That's not directly tied in with the environment manager. That's actually a separate system. But
Ah,
that
my
is a
bad
great
then.
segue to the next point. What this allows us for. Yeah, this is just a demo of the post processing and skybox transitions, because fancy animated skyboxes that are technically not skyboxes, and yeah, all of this is just prototypes. So just very overtuned transitions. Everything turns very green, and if we go walk inside, everything turns very blue. Just by altering the post-processing filters, and then if we leave the building, everything turns back to normal.
and
So
now I
yeah.
know at one point there was talk about like I don't know if this is still on the table, but like is this something that like a GM could influence as well,
Yes,
or yeah?
100%. That's the other thing why this definitely needs to interface with our systems, because we want to eventually not only implement GM-driven post-processing overrides for stuff like, I don't know,
There's a magic
net
portable that
visibility,
appears or whatever.
yeah, or magic portals or whatever, but we also want to eventually implement weather events. So each of the maps is going to get a specific weather event that can be GM activated and disabled. In the Wastelands, it's most likely going to be a sandstorm. For the Undercity, we're currently exploring the possibility of a steamy cloud going through the pipes of the sewers. For the row, we're looking into some rain, because what's greater than a cyberpunk slum where it's also raining? I mean, it's just Blade
Yeah,
Runner.
yeah.
And for Union Heights, we're investigating a few things that we could do, but essentially we want to implement these globally GM activated weather events just to change up the mood of a map mid-session, and this will hook into that environment system and ambience manager.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So the other thing that we were kind of hinting at there, the on the audio side of things.
Oh yeah. Okay, so the new music system, actually, pause it for a second. As most of you know, a lot of our players usually just turn off the map music in the beginning of the session, play their own music, because all locations currently just have one location-specific song on loop. So different locations still have different music, but if you, for example, spend 4 hours of your session sitting in Scraptown, then you listen to the same Scraptown song for 4 hours on end, and you can weather that for a session or two, but we have literally had people go insane because they had to listen to the same Scraptown song for too long. So we sat down with some of our audio designers and composers and came up with a new system that also ties into the environment manager, which is essentially able to alter the background music at runtime. And this demo consists of 2 clips. And the first clip, docs, please. This here is a background track in a fully assembled form. It is a relatively short loop, and really quick and easy for the makers to make, which means they can create more of them, which means more individualized location soundtracks. And we're just gonna let it run out and then skip to the next clip, and that's where the magic happens. So, as we can see in the next clip, our system... Oh, no, that is too far.
That one yet?
Not that one yet. Yeah, our system is able to go into this clip and dynamically enable and disable certain instrumental tracks in a randomized manner, which allows us to create a never completely repeating and theoretically infinitely long soundtrack that always changes things up. And for the sake of demonstration, I sped up the changes a little bit, but the soundtrack will dynamically change with a very small file size and very good performance. And most importantly, admin overridable.
So that if there's an intense scene going on, you can kind of
Boss
kick up the
music.
drums or whatever. Yeah, boss music, whatever it
Yeah.
needs to be.
Boss music, if a GM determines that there's a firefight going on, the music can pick up, and all of that is implemented into this new sound system. You can just hear it run through a few iterations in the background.
Yeah, and of course, like obviously, I imagine we will still get a lot of people who prefer to do their own music, but I would recommend at least giving it a little bit of a try because I like the idea as well. I think one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is scene pacing. And when you have a song that's just on loop forever and ever and ever and never changes, it can be even harder to know, oh, we've been in the same scene for 15 minutes. When you have little changes every now and then, kind of changing the mood, even just a little bit, I think that they can kind of help, remind yourself, oh, okay, let's get this scene moving along. Obviously we want to not be stuck on this one moment where nothing's happening or whatever it is. Being able to kind of have something breaking that up a little bit can really help, I think, because it's not, I wouldn't say it's like a major issue or anything, but it can help to kind of have those moments of okay, now we've gone, okay, the percussion just kind of came back in. I'm kind of feeling like I can, okay, I think I've come, my characters come to the realizations that they need to come to through this scene, and now I can move on to the next thing. I've kind of got that drive back up, whatever it is. I think that's one of the nice things that this can do without being too much like oh, okay, we've had the music completely change, or oh, whatever it is. I think that's one of the nice things, is anything that kind of adds a little bit of life, a little bit of variety can surprisingly help roleplay.
Yeah, and really quick, because our lead dev just pointed it out in chat already, but this music specifically is very placeholder. The only reason why it is in this demo is because I felt too bad to have you guys listen to the song loop I recorded on my kazoo, because you would have all sued me for hearing damage. But yeah, that actually leads us to the other side, that is the non-music that we have also been overhauling.
Yeah.
And dogs, there should be an OGG file in that folder. Can you play that for us, please?
I believe it's number 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope,
Oh.
that is not number 16.
This is. We'll
It's
put a
row.
technical moment. Don't mind us. It should be called 16 Neum, if that helps, Doc.
Mhm. All
sure
row
we've all heard
residents
that.
will
Yeah.
get some flashbacks, and this is a prime example of how stuff used to generate the ambience in the row. Effectively, we just had some global noises that got somewhat randomized and then thrown at the players. They had no actual relation to the row whatsoever. A lot of people just got jump scared specifically by this Neum sound. And I'm so going to send it to Nick Nack once we're done here. But yeah, it's
It does
During-
add some ambience, but at the
It's-
same time, when you're constantly hearing that and you're not seeing as it happens a car fly overhead, there's a little bit of disconnect of like, what exactly am I hearing?
yeah.
And the clank in the fire district getting jump scared every 15
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Little things like
there
that.
were
Yep.
these sounds
Mhm.
that gained a little bit of fame within the community because spending 4 hours on a map at a time, you'll encounter these sounds. So to combat these, we introduced another new system that, on one hand, optimizes the way how audio sources are getting handled, and on the other hand, allows us to put a lot more actually localized audio sources into the maps. And one of the things that allows us is to actually create some proper Foley sound. And yes, director, this is non-baked lighting. I was told to mention that. So this is basically just a placeholder demonstration straight out of my Unity scene.
Yeah. This lighting is not final. This is not what it's going to look like. This
Definitely
is
not final.
Yeah. This is before Oblivious has had their hand at poking at fixing
I
this
believe it's
light.
just completely unbaked, actually. The
Yeah.
only thing that's baked that's seen is the reflection probes. But what it allows us, if you roll the clip, is to place audio sources where it would make sense. So you can hear the fountain and the water inside the fountain. If we move down the main road of the row, we can hear the humming of the street lanterns. Moving a little bit further, there's
street
another lantern above us. And then, for example, stuff like the steam coming out of the vent. And all of these will basically allow us to create a dynamic soundscape that properly matches the environment you're in and immerses the player even further, instead of just having a generic background track that does not really match the environment you're in at all. And yeah, all of that thanks to both the efforts of Snow, who coded the background system that makes these things possible without blowing everybody's PCs up, and our wonderful audio team, specifically Chair and Meshi, for going in and creating an incredible amount of Foley sounds to populate all these spaces.
And now I also know that like there was a little bit of a teaser for this, during the last few episodes of 3.5. In the Undercity, I know, like you would hear little dripping sounds, you'd hear the waterfall, things like that.
The waterfalls
That
sound
was-
like waterfalls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things that like, for me, the moment I first walked up to the waterfall and heard it, it blew my mind that it hadn't been there the entire time.
Yeah,
Like it was one of those things that I always expected. Oh, of course, it's a waterfall, of course. But it's a wonderful thing of just like, oh, okay, yeah, it actually feels like we're moving around, and like sometimes there's a waterfall that you have to like, okay, it's too loud here. Let's let's talk over here, you know, whatever it is. It's nice little, you know, environmental, makes you feel like you're in the environment a little bit more. And that's separate from the music as well. So if people, you know, the music could be toggled off and you could still hear those sounds. It's not a thing where, oh well, you know, I like having my own music because I, you know, spend hours a day, you know, uh, getting certain playlists, you know, for different moods, which I think is a cool thing that some people do. But you know, not everyone has that time. uh, and actually being able to say, okay, well, you know, you can still just mute the music if you want, and still have all these, you know, new Foley sounds that we're getting in. I think that's a nice little thing that, you know, you might not think about, but it's nice to have.
Mhm.
Audio is incredibly important to filling out a space and making it feel
Yes.
like you're actually there. There have been so many times where I've been in beautiful, beautiful maps here on VRChat, but then there's no audio and it feels wrong. It feels empty and
Yeah.
hollow.
Mhm.
And even now, just the ambient sort of hum that you can hear here in the Undercity is already a good start. But having the ability to add in these localized sounds to match the environment really, really helps immerse you in the space that you're in and makes it feel very real. And like you had said, once it's there, you wonder why it was never there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mhm.
And also, it kind of takes you a little bit further away from, like, I mean, if I turn, you know, the music off here, all I'm hearing for the most part is just my computer humming over there, and that pulls you out of immersion so quick.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Um, but yeah, a lot of great stuff that we've seen so far. I believe that is all of our little videos and images, if that's correct. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Um, but that's not to mean that that's everything. So obviously, as Oblivious was mentioning earlier, the lighting. Uh, as we saw here, this was not the, you know, the final thing, but you've done a complete, or you're planning on doing a complete lighting overhaul pass on everything, correct?
Yes, this is something that we started for 3.5. One of the major things was completely reevaluating what sort of shaders we were using and the ways we were using them. One of the big things that we had started to do during season 3.5 was using a shading technique known as spherical harmonics, which allows us to simulate the real-time lighting in a map, store that as data on an extra light map, and then display that in a shader. That's what allows us to have. I know, especially like one of my favorite examples is the row. Looking around, you'll be able to stand beneath a street light, and if you look down at the ground in front of you, you can see the light of that not just illuminating the ground, but also reflecting back up, and you can
Mm.
see that highlight there. And
Bounces.
I know. Snow knows there was a moment where I had to stop and break character because I was so happy with how parts of the map were looking now that we had these just this tiny little lighting detail, this
Mhm.
highlight, um, standing at the entrance to the graveyard area. You could see shadows and highlights, and looking down this hallway, it looked so natural. And
Mhm.
that's kind of our goal here is to continue to optimize and improve the lighting that we have in the maps, making things feel more diegetic, while also just making things feel like they pop. You know, adding that contrast that really, really good lighting can help bring to a space.
Yeah. And also on that note, you mentioned optimized, you know, that this is going to be a more optimized system. I think that's also a thing worth mentioning is that uh, the goal of bringing optimization, I mean, especially in something like the Wasteland, to a better spot, because I mean that's been an issue for some people. There are some people who never go to the Wasteland in character because their PCs can't handle it. Um, I think that's also worth noting. You know, somewhere is there that there is an intent as well with all these things to make sure that we're in a better spot than we were before in terms of performance
Mm.
across the board.
It's
Yeah.
one of those give and take balance kind of thing, because
Mhm.
earlier we were talking about how Union Heights is going to be all in space, the rooms next to rooms and whatnot. One thing we did with the Wasteland is we did remove some of the areas that weren't frequently visited. They were often, excursions, but they were present on the map at all times.
Yeah.
Which just being present, even though there's occlusion, so it's not being rendered all the time, there's still overhead and impact on that. So there's still decisions of saying, okay, well, this spot here does need to be a transitionary area, for the sake of performance, and pull that out into a separate map or come up with another solution for it. That's one thing we did for the Wastelands, trying to get one of those really big improvement steps during 3.5.
Because was that the volcano area? Was the okay.
Yep, the
The
volcano
volcano was
area.
a big one, yeah.
I think there's another section. I believe the I forget what it was called, the underground base, that got some of it removed too.
In the Wasteland?
No, I'm trying
In
to
the Wasteland,
remember.
yeah. Where
Underground
in
base.
season 2, or maybe early
Oh.
season 3,
Oh, of course, part of the Titan base.
VR16.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Titan bunker, yeah.
the Titan
Yes,
base, the
yeah.
Titan bunker. Yes, that's
Yeah.
what it was.
Oh,
The
yeah,
entrance
there were
to
portions
the
of it
entrance
still
there were
there.
stuff that
yeah.
were still left in the map.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a question of like, why is this here? We don't want this here.
Exactly.
This needs to be just a separate thing because people aren't going down there enough for us to really warrant
Right.
having it constantly there and being a draw on resources in a map that is, because of the nature of it, very, very CPU intensive.
Yeah.
We're happy to have such a big space, but that big space does come at a pretty
At a
large
cost, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's actually another thing that we're currently playing around with and starting to work on is Unity by default does something called occlusion culling, which is an attempt to optimize the performance by unloading certain things that are not in direct visual range. The problem is that the occlusion culling is not the most optimal way to do certain things. It at a certain point starts generating a lot of performance overhead itself. So we are currently investigating using a self-made system for that instead. That will be more optimized to the VR application in relatively tightly segmented spaces like we have them in the ND maps. So yeah, that's another thing we're currently looking into and working on. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and again, the goal there being, better frame rates, more, fewer people having issues like loading into maps, or being able to exist in maps at all. And so, any improvement to that, I think, is always going to be good.
Yep.
My hope is that between all of the improvements that the VRChat team has made and the improvements that we're making here locally within our own dev team, that season 4 will hopefully be the smoothest season we've had visually since the project's inception.
In
And
fact, that's
it's
a good segue into the backend work. Sorry.
actually, I know what you're going to talk about, but maybe one more thing, just because you just mentioned the keyword VRChat team. That's one of the great things about Neon Divide. We are able to work together with the VRChat development team really, really closely due to the connections and tie-ins that we have to them. And that also allows us to constantly give them feedback and improve their systems together with them. One of the new systems that is upcoming on the horizon at some point in the hopefully not too distant future, soon TM, is the whole topic of major Udon updates. We are already in talks with them about getting access to some beta versions of that so we can start porting our systems and testing our systems on the big updates early instead of just getting completely run over by a spontaneous, oh, hey, by the way, Udon 2 Electric Boogaloo is here now. And then having to adapt all our systems overnight. So, yeah, the tight collaboration with the VRChat team in that regards is really helpful.
Yeah. I think between the updates for Udon 2 and making certain that our systems are able to make the transition successfully, I know the other one we've been really talking to them pretty closely on has been persistence, and hoping we can try to work with them to get access to some early closed beta
And that is
releases
Sizzle's.
of that, so that way we can not only have wonderful cross map systems like Sizzle will probably tell us about here in just a moment, but also have access to things like saved settings for our lovely menu systems, gun preferences, and even more.
Yeah. In the past, one of the limitations that we've been working with is that basically all of the data for the entire roleplay is present on every single map at all times. So, specifically character sheets. So, every single registered character that's in Neon Divide, their character sheet exists on every single map, whether they're there or not. So, one thing that we're looking at with the recent addition of web strings and being able to directly pull to the internet, also with some systems that Deadly's doing for in between, is greatly making that system a lot more performant and having a proper back end to it. Previously, basically the way that we were doing was data coming out of VRChat was just getting logged to the VRChat log, and we'd have a Python script scrubbing through that log and then sending that out to the server. And then when the server would come back with information, there was a layer where the Mapbot would actually have a keyboard on its screen and would be inserting characters into that keyboard physically. Now we're going to have a way to get rid of that physical layer and programmatically get that data into the map. So we're going to be able to specifically say, okay, this player has landed on the map. Let's load its data sheet for all the other players that are currently here, and for that player. And a nice thing about not having to physically enter single characters is that it's going to be a much more dependable system and much more efficient. Because instead of boop 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 boop, it's instantly here's the data kind of thing, and instantly get it processing.
And also one of the
less
nice things.
prone to breaking, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
One of the other nice things about it is that previously there was this kind of cutoff point of, okay, if you have any character updates to your character sheet, you have to get those in before the next, before the next map upload. And every time we wanted to do character updates, there needed to be a new map upload. And so now we could potentially go weeks in a row without uploading a new map version if we needed, if we
Fingers
wanted
crossed.
to.
That's
Super,
fingers
super
crossed.
powerful thing
That's
to
the
be
one
able to
thing.
do.
And the other
And-
thing, it also works the other way around. We can theoretically also update this data mid-session. So if, for example, imagine the following scenario, a character is in the Undercity and gets their leg chopped off. I know it's a little bit of a drastic scenario, but then Skiz, as an Undercity GM, could, for example, go in and update their character sheet and be like, hey, lost their leg in Season 4, Episode 14, chopped off from the knee downwards, and then just hit the update button in their admin interface, and then the player moves up to the role, for example, and by the time that they have entered the role, the system will have pulled their updated sheet, and Knick-Knack, for example, GMing the role, can see on their sheet, oh yeah, they just got their leg chopped off from the knee downwards 15 minutes ago. So that's the other benefit that this gives us. Instead of being stuck to a static set of data, we can actually update it mid-session and portray changes in the character sheet across all the maps, more or less in real time.
Heck yeah. Yeah, because that's always one of those things that's like, because you could potentially even do stuff like, oh, okay, I've taken, a wound or something. Like, again, I've got some health damage. Okay, I'm going to another map. Oh, I need to, let me ping a GM as soon as I enter the map and, get myself hurt a little bit by the GMs to reflect that. That's something that we've had to deal with in the past. And this could potentially allow us to do that as well, just by having that information go back up to the server. and then come back down on another map, potentially. I don't know if that specific use case is
absolutely. That metadata will all be tracked and synced online. I've already done this on other maps for admin panels. So being able to tag players as admin, facilitator, or player, and that being persistent across multiple worlds, I can simply go online, make that change, and within usually a minute, it's pulling the data every minute. Regardless of where that person is in which map, they will either gain or lose those permissions
very cool.
And abilities. But with this, it's going to be much more robust, where it'll have the character sheet, all of the character meta information, their current status, and their full inventory. So we'll be able to hopefully, now onto the hopefully stuff, do things like inventory management online. So instead of having to, if a GM doesn't want to go through trying to scroll through everything and whatnot, there could be a web page that they can easily go into with a keyboard, find things quicker, and type in values and whatnot instead of dealing with sliders and whatnot.
Very cool.
So
very cool.
Having a unified backend system for all of this data opens a lot of possibilities.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, again, like all this is, making it easier to role play in, to GM in, that's the big goal here is, not to just overcomplicate, but to make it, okay, let's get these systems, let's make them in a way that makes it so that when we're role playing. We're not fighting with the systems or anything.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that's, one of the coolest things that I think, I keep bringing it up, but I love that that's, a focus of the dev team is making sure that, these things that we're adding in, that they're adding to the role play experience. They're not overcomplicating it or anything.
And also adding to the viewer experience too. So with Spectre 2.0 that we've had in the past, imagine adding health bars to all the players.
That
and
would be
even
cool,
more
yeah.
real-time information, because now instead of having to parse 100 meg, multiple hundreds of meg text file, all that location data is just that relevant data is sent up and instantly updated, so much more real-time, so both GMs and viewers.
I get you now. Okay, yeah. Okay, now that you say that, I'm understanding it a little bit better. Very cool. Very cool.
Like on a web page, sorry.
Yeah. And so for the record, is the Spectre view, is that in, like, are we still working on that as like a hopefully, or is that where are we on that at the moment? Is that a hopefully? Is that
I think
like
right
a
now
definite
publicly
thing,
it's
or
labeled as hopefully.
hopefully? Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Spectre itself is not our number one priority right now. We will most likely going to be able to do it eventually, but at the moment, stuff like the actual back end that everything runs on, that means the sheet management, the inventory management, all of that comes first before we start, before we are able to add the Spectre as an additional outwards facing layer on top of that.
Got to make sure that we have a role play first.
Yeah, and given the complexity and how many changes have been made to relevant and related systems, not just on our end, but through VRChat.
Twitch's side as well.
I mean,
for something
even
like
then,
that, yeah.
like I know one of like the chat function has broken in the player handheld system because Twitch decided to change their API on us. So without warning, we have to go in and fix stuff like that. But it's stuff like that. We would love to be able to make improvements and support them. But right now, our biggest priorities are making certain that the core role play functions are there and good to go. And I know working on the back end that supports that is our bigger priority before we start being able to add extra features and other things to that. Because once we do have a really solid backend support system that we can add to and expand upon with time, that will then enable us to add so many of the features like Sizzle was talking about, and basically make something that is truly robust.
Very cool. So we do have only about 10 minutes left here. I guess just kind of, we're still obviously working away on season 4. No, dates announced yet or anything like that. But kind of what are the things that everyone's kind of looking forward to for season 4? I guess start off with Oblivious.
Goodness. For me, it's hopefully wrapping up a story. I have been playing this character for close to 5 years now, and she's been through a lot. And with all of the amazing stuff that we've got going on, I think season 4 is shaping up to be not just a big season for the roleplay, but I know personally, like, I really want to dive into what my character means for me and see where that takes me within Neon Divide for the future, whether that means new characters or taking on different roles, or seeing what comes next.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about you, Sizzle?
I'm 100% agree. It's just continuation of story of character development. Definitely at the end of 3.5, my character Ader was at a massively transitionary period, going from medic to whatever's next. So I'm curious to see if Ader has a villain arc. So if we're gonna get Murder Ader or not.
I mean, as an Undercity GM, I would gladly assist if you want to go down that route.
Of course.
And what about you, Dudley?
I mean, it's a hard question to answer. On one hand, I
Yeah.
am almost tempted to say just getting to RP in general is the thing that I'm most looking forward to, because it has been quite a while since 3.5 ended. I haven't had the time to really join other RPs because I've spent so much time working on ND. And I personally can't wait to just be able to lean back and watch other people, namely the GM team, work instead. Other than that, I'm probably looking forward the most to just getting to explore and RP in and around Union Heights, because it's going to be a completely new space for everybody. I can't wait to see how other players will adapt to it and how it will in the end find its spot in the ecosystem of indie. And yeah, I guess for me, as one of the people working on it and as one of the people working on all of these systems, it's almost like a giant science experience where it's just absolutely exciting to see where it will go.
Yeah. And also, just a reminder for everyone involved in the project, there is still, we're doing, the community team is running little hangouts every now and then, and the non-canon nights as well. They've recently spun those back up. We just had a recent non-canon night. Was that last week?
Yeah,
and I
Undercity
think
job swap.
yeah, that was a lot of fun. And so if you get that, if you're feeling that RP itch, I think they're planning on doing 1 or 2 events a month currently. So keep an eye out for those. And obviously, when we have more of an idea of when season 4 will be coming out, we'll let you know. But for now, we're just still working away, making sure that everything is in a good spot and that we're not rushing it out the door, that we're not getting to things before we've actually finished things.
I think if anything, and it kind of addresses, because I know people ask, a number of people within the staff, like, oh, when's season 4 happening? When is everything going to be ready? I think I can speak pretty solidly on this, that everybody on the team, whether it's dev, character team, GM team, admin, doesn't matter who you are, everybody is just as eager to get back into it. But I think one of the things that has made Neon Divide what it is has been our want to make an experience that is not only unique but is also as clean and as high quality as we can make it with the tools that we have at the time. And these long periods of time, yes, they suck, but at the end of the day, we have a bunch of incredibly talented people trying to come together to make that next season even better than the last.
Yeah, I'm eager, as I'm sure everyone is, to get back in, but I'm even more eager to to just see what we can do with it, and make it an even better RP experience. So I'm excited.
Very.
With that, I believe we're at the
Yeah.
end.
I think.
everyone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
Hold
just
on.
say this is the end of the podcast. Hello, everyone. I just want to say thank you, everyone who showed up and said hi. All that. We've been reading the chat and love you all. If you guys still want to support the project, you can support us going to patreon.com/neondivide. We still have a Patreon. We're running that and all that stuff. More features will come to it in the future and all that. But hopefully everyone had a fun time listening to this lovely podcast. Before we go, I want to see everyone say goodbye and all that stuff. Anyone want to promote themselves at all? Anything?
Yeah, by all means. If you got any other projects that you want to shout out, any anything that you're working on, any big streams you got coming up, if you're a streamer or anything like that, feel free to shout them out. Deadly, anything to shout out?
Well, I would promote my Twitter here, but I'm banned from Twitter. Other than that,
What?
I'll tell you after the podcast. Longer story.
Okay.
Yeah, I occasionally stream on Twitch, Twitch TV /DeadlyDoner, DeadlyDoener. I also plan on streaming more of my work on ND again. A lot of it was not streamed because we wanted to do the big reveal of shit here, but there's gonna be more coming on there, just of me working and screaming at my PC because stuff doesn't work the way how I want it to work. Yeah, other than
That
that,
stuff is
sizzle.
exciting.
Yeah, twitch.tv/sizzle_bell, BELLE. I stream a lot of roleplay, sometimes development work. I'm active everywhere that I can be, so come check it out.
Well, and you can find me as well over at Twitch, Oblivious VR, all one word. I stream really frequently, full time basically, and in between that, I like to do a lot of dev streams, whether it be avatars, worlds, Udon. I like experimenting and learning, so come learn with me. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, again, thank you all for coming by for this episode of SlummerTV. Dogs, do you want to take it away from here?
Yes. One last wave while we are going to
Goodbye, everyone.
The emo healer.
Ah,
Oh, emo.
go say hi to Emo.
Yeah, we love Emo. He's doing some cool stuff tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, is he?
Otherwise,
Yeah, he's got a mission with a hammock.
I guess everyone had a good night.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And
Take care.
Oh.
And there we go.